What's up everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So today we're going back to visit Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game, and we're looking at some of the really big differences that you have from the comic book series, which I think they're taking a lot of their inspiration from, and from the gameplay presentations that we've had so far. For those of you who may or may not know, we've had 3 major gameplay presentations in form of trailer, gameplay trailer, and even some kind of a story trailer that we've gotten. And I think we also had that huge Q&A at the DC Fandom event from 2020. But what I wanted to iterate in this video is we're seeing some differences from the way the graphic novel kind of depicts the Suicide Squad relationship with the Justice League. In fact, this game is named Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The comic series is pretty much named Suicide Squad versus the Justice League, and they do have directives to actually try to kill the Justice League, but it's not something that actually manifests in that sense. And I'll go ahead and spend some time over multiple videos iterating some of these differences that we're seeing. As of today, nonetheless, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the bosses and the bad guys that have been depicted in the game compared to, say, the comic series. So let's go ahead and start with the big bad baddie. And many of us already know that from this particular game's presentation that Brainiac seems to be the main protagonist that's going to pretty much be running the show. You can already see the Brainiac symbol on this big, huge, mechanistic octopus-like ship or whatever it is, and that already sets the tone to say, okay, it seems we're going to be seeing Superman play a big role here. I think the developers revealed that to indicate that this is where the direction is going to be. Now here's the kicker. In the comic books, the bad guy is actually Eclipsio. Now, you will see from the comic series, if you were maybe reading it, or if you're maybe going through it and trying to figure out, what the relationships are, Eclipsio is pretty much released through a medium, another protagonist himself, but it's not really a protagonist. Also someone who's a Suicide Squad member or a set of Suicide Squad members, and it's really interesting to see how that works. Another really interesting thing, though, with all of this is this big difference really will now dictate a lot of the directions in which a story would go, which makes me kind of more excited as to how Rocksteady plans on doing this, because them not sticking directly with the comic book or the graphic novels tells you that they're probably going to be importing a lot of different aspects from the different storylines that have to do with the Justice League and have relationships with the Suicide Squad as well. So there's going to be some animosity, and I also see there being some kind of a camaraderie at the end of the day. I mean, if you kind of want to go back and think about it, they really have to depend on one another in the comic series, and I think they're probably going to have to do the same even in this video game at some point. And the big question a lot of people are probably asking is how Batman is going to fit into the picture. I think we really have to go back and reiterate that and consider that as we're going to be, examining all of this. So some really interesting points and some really interesting plot lines that all of this story kind of carries within it is how the Justice League, who have already been somewhat corrupted, are going to get subverted by, say, other Justice League members. You see, the game puts Suicide Squad in the forefront, but we all know that as much as you can say, okay, the Suicide Squad will go against the Justice League, there has to be some extra help for the Suicide Squad. In fact, we already got to see it here in the trailer where we got to see Wonder Woman, who seems like she is still sane and has not been corrupted by Brainiac. So I think they're going to get help from this particular medium. If you read, say, the comic books, you're going to see that within that comic book, there are other members of the Justice League who actually come in to subvert the corrupted Justice League members and thereby aid the Suicide Squad. There are also Suicide Squad members who kind of get carried away too, but the stories are actually much more complex than you're going to be seeing in the way the video game depicts it compared to how the comics do depict it. But one really cool thing is very, very apparent here. They seem to have selected the squad members that they want, that, they want to basically put out there in front based on maybe playability and some other things. And I think, in my opinion, what we're going to see is we're going to see a really big role for Amanda Waller in this particular iteration. I know it seems like, she's pretty much in a very interesting spot where she's, just hurling out commands and all of the above. But in reality, ladies and gentlemen, she's actually in the forefront of a lot of stuff. One thing about Suicide Squad is every Suicide Squad iteration that you see, Amanda Waller really plays a very, very big role. And I'm guessing to myself that the developers are going to make sure that their writing showcases her. And I think the big plot line in this particular game is, in my opinion, going to focus around Amanda Waller and the Batman. And it sounds crazy, but I think that as the comics have depicted that, the developers are going to try to have to center their story around this. This makes it very interesting because if you continue to consider potential extensions of this storyline, it gets you in a place where you're like, man, there are just so many pinpoints that you can come from. And I think this is what the developers were probably trying to do. At first, it sounded really weird why they would select the Suicide Squad to make their game and build it around. But now that I'm starting to see how expansive the story is, because even those comics, they span about 4 books or 3, I can't remember specifically, and it provides a lot of different story possibilities that you can go with. And even though they're probably not going to be taking 100% of the notes, it really does provide for them a lot of creative basis, like a foundation to start from, and then eventually build from there. But anyways, these are my thoughts so far regarding the biggest differences between the main bosses and some other aspects of the story for Suicide Squad, the game, compared to what we have in the canon. And I'm certain that the developers, if they do a good job in providing a solid gameplay experience, a good narrative, they're going to be able to write a story that is custom to them, but is still respectful of the different elements within this particular storyline. So talk to me in the comment section. I really would love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully we'll talk in another video, and peace out.